Hey everybody, welcome back, and if this is your first time, welcome for the first time. And since we had so much fun on our previous story about the Devil's Track of Calhoun County, I want to go somewhere a little bit further from Calhoun County today. In fact, we're going to go all the way to north central Tennessee. Today's story is set during the time of the American Civil War, but it's going to have far-reaching consequences into not only the years before our time today, but probably for quite a while, another lifetime or two. So let's dive into the story. So today's story is set during the time of the American Civil War. You know, when we think about the American Civil War, you would probably have a difficult time finding anyone, and I mean anyone, who lived during that bloody fratricidal strife that was the American Civil War who remained unaffected. Even to this day, those 4 years of conflict have had a butterfly effect upon millions and millions of lives. Even so, when Captain William Turnbull marched out with Company B of the 83rd Illinois Infantry Regiment from Fort Donelson, Tennessee in August of 1864, their mission really didn't promise any kind of far-reaching consequences. You see, the telegraph lines running to Smithland, Kentucky were in need of repair, and Turnbull's company was assigned to guard the men working on these, well, I guess you could say primitive predecessors of modern communication. Easy peasy, you go out, you make sure these fellows can work in peace, then you come on back. But y'all know, nothing is that easy, and nothing ever goes quite to plan all the time. Because about 15 miles from Fort Donelson, local citizens brought word of an excellent opportunity. 6 rebel guerrillas were in the area stealing horses. Now, this news put Turnbull's detachment in an excellent position to capture some of these enemy nuisances roaming the area. So what does Turnbull do? He took 11 men of his company and he marched over a half a dozen miles from his camp before getting just close enough to fire a single volley into the guerrilla party. As you can probably expect, those Johnnies didn't stick around very long. I mean, they were Confederate guerrillas, and that's kind of the guerrilla thing. Hit and run, cause some mayhem, but when you ran into the real deal, you kind of took the leg bail and got out of Dodge. So Turnbull's detachment was really only able to capture a single gun and a single horse, and they decided, well, let's go on back to camp. After all, there was only 12 men, including Turnbull, and they had about 100 men back at camp probably, and you didn't want to be out in, well, no man's land with only 12 men. However, Turnbull's pursuit had stirred up a hornet's nest, because only a short distance into their return to the safety of the rest of their comrades, Turnbull's detachment ran into trouble. Not a few guerrillas, but about 110 rebels. Not sure if they were guerrillas or cavalry or something, but they were 110 rebels, that is for certain. And these rebels fired a single volley at just like 20 yards, which is essentially point-blank range, before they charged into this horribly outnumbered Federal detachment. And to their credit, these Yankee men, they didn't run. They fought back, but it was just too much for them as these rebel horsemen just charged into them and are slashing back and forth with their sabers and are blazing at them with their pistols. Y'all, it was no contest. As you would expect, they were outnumbered almost 10-1. And at the end of this one-sided melee, 7 of Turnbull's soldiers had perished. In fact, the hideous wounds to their faces and heads gave a testament to just how brutal this skirmish had been. Even the doomed detachment's fearless commander, Turnbull, was found nearby, where he had perished in his own desperate last-ditch stand. Now, a couple men were captured, yes, but they still had one of those deadly Confederate prisoner of war camps like Andersonville to look forward to. Miraculously, though, 2 soldiers of this mauled command did manage to escape. In fact, one of them, only 19 years old, fell bleeding from saber strikes to his chest and his neck and bullet wounds to his face and his head in what seemed to be yet another fatality of this ambush. But then he did essentially the only thing that he could do in his badly wounded state. He played possum, as we say down south. He played dead. In fact, he played dead for several hours until he just passed out, probably from his wounds. And then 2 days later, he woke back up. And after he wakes up, he finds out that all his comrades are dead. So once again, he does the only thing that he could do. He crawls to safety. And he crawls all the way to the Tennessee River, where a Union gunboat, fortunately, comes by and picks him up and takes him back to Union lines, and he goes on to survive the war. And after the war, he goes back to civilian life, or actually, he kind of starts his civilian life. Because remember, he's only like 19 years old. And he meets a young lady, and he gets married. You know, he did the kind of thing people do. And eventually, in 1884, he had a son named Clyde. And then in 1907, that son would become a father to his own son. And he and his wife decided to name that son after his paternal grandfather, that Civil War veteran who had so narrowly escaped death at that skirmish at Pine Bluff, Tennessee. They named him Marion Robert Morrison. But you, I, and pretty much the entire world know him better by his stage name, John Wayne. Much has been made about the fact that John Wayne never served in the military, even though he did apply for the Naval Academy. But make no mistake, he came from good stock. I love y'all, and I'll talk at you later.